When I was a kid, my uncle watched me, secretly. Followed me around like a shadow. And my parents? They knew. But instead of protecting me, they buried the truth. I was 8 years old the day it all started to unravel. My cousins and I were running around my uncle's place during one of those weekend get-togethers. You know the type, adults sitting around drinking wine and beer, while the kids vanish into corners of the house playing hide-and-seek. I thought I'd outsmarted everyone. Found a perfect hiding spot upstairs. There was this narrow hallway tucked away on the second floor, barely used, kinda forgotten. At the very end, there was a closet with a janky handle that didn't really latch right. I slipped inside, pulled the door shut behind me, and crouched down behind a wall of old coats. Felt safe. Until I leaned back and felt something weird. A breeze. Cold. Damp. Like a basement, but wrong. Turns out, behind me was another door I hadn't noticed. I pushed it open and stepped into this small, musty room. It smelled like mold and something else. Something I didn't recognize at the time. Now I know what it was. The stink of silence. Of secrets left to rot in a place built to keep them hidden. A room where things happened, things so dark, the walls should have cried out. Inside there were shelves crammed with binders, a beat-up old laptop looping silent videos of kids, and a thick black book. My name was written right there on the spine. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. Dozens of photos. Of me. Asleep. Getting dressed. Playing in the yard. Some looked like they'd been taken through windows. Others felt like security footage. I felt my stomach drop like a rock. I backed out fast, shut both doors tight, and didn't speak a word until we got home later that night. I remember sitting on the edge of my parents' bed, trembling from head to toe. I told them everything. What I saw. What was in the book. My mom glanced at my dad, and they just froze. Then she said I must have had a nightmare. That I was probably just trying to distract from getting in trouble for snooping around. My dad said I was being dramatic. That talk like this could tear the family apart. Those were his exact words. Destroy the family. They told me to let it go. To never mention it again. So I didn't. I locked that memory away like that room, and never went near that hallway again. Never played hide-and-seek after that. Started sleeping with the lights on. Kept my door locked at night. As time passed, I tried to convince myself I'd made it up. Maybe it was just a strange office. Maybe it was just a dream. But when I was 24, the news hit. My uncle got arrested. Tried to lure a little girl into his car outside an elementary school. Every local news channel ran the story. What stopped me cold was the photo. That girl, she looked just like I did at 8. Same short haircut. Same pink dress. Same tie-dye sneakers. And just like that, it all came flooding back. The book. The laptop. That hidden room that felt more like a horror set than something real. I picked up the phone and called my parents. My mom's voice was all tight. She said it was a horrible misunderstanding and told me not to dredge up the past. My dad warned me not to go digging again. Said it had nothing to do with me. 2 days later, the prosecutor called. They thought I might have been one of his first victims. Asked if I remembered anything, if I'd be willing to testify. I hesitated. Said I wasn't sure. Then they told me they'd found a drawer. Looked worn, like it had been opened and closed for years. But there wasn't much else. No other books. No evidence of other kids. Just that one drawer. For a while I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Then it hit me, the hallway. The closet. That second door that opened like a secret. How the carpet dipped a little right in front of it. I told them everything I remembered. Where to look. The exact spot, second floor, far hallway, the closet with the bad handle, the panel at the back that looked like a wall. A week later they called again. They'd found it. The room. The binders. The laptop. And dozens of other books. Each one labeled with a name. Some of those names matched missing persons cases going back 2 decades. A few of the kids had never been found, until now. There were maps. Notes about where he'd buried them. Even video logs. Nobody in my family would talk about it. My dad stopped replying to my messages altogether. My mom sent me a single text. "You don't know the damage you're doing." A week later, I dropped off some old mail at their house. My dad wasn't home. But his study door? It was wide open. He never let me in there growing up. I don't even know why I looked. Something just pulled me in. Inside his bottom drawer was a binder. Just one. But it looked exactly like the ones I'd seen in that room. Same black spine. Same label. Same kind of stickers. This one had a name I didn't know. But the photo clipped to the front page made my blood go cold. A little girl, maybe 9, swinging at a park. Smiling. Laughing. No clue some creep was watching her from a distance. It wasn't just my uncle. My dad was part of it too. I stood there, holding that binder, feeling like the whole house was going to collapse around me. That girl, she looked so innocent. So happy. Just like I used to be. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Then I heard the front door open. I panicked. Jammed the binder back in the drawer, slammed it shut, and slipped out of the study just before he walked in. I mumbled something about the mail and practically sprinted to my car. Sat in the driveway with my keys in my hand, frozen. Couldn't start the engine. What the hell was I supposed to do? This wasn't just about my uncle anymore. This was my dad. I eventually drove home in a fog, nearly missed my exit. Twice. Got back to my apartment, locked the door, then checked it 3 times. Closed all the blinds. Sat on the couch in the dark. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Part of me wanted to erase it. Pretend none of it happened. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. The next morning, I called the prosecutor. Her name was Monica Reyes. She'd been the only steady hand through this nightmare. I told her what I'd found in my dad's office. There was a long pause on the line. Then she asked if I'd help them keep digging. They needed proof, she said. Something solid they could use. I said yes before I even knew what I was signing up for. What was I supposed to do? Walk away? At that point, it wasn't just about me anymore. There were other kids. Other victims. Maybe even ones still out there, still at risk. I couldn't live with myself if I did nothing. Monica set up a meeting for me with a detective named Daniel Cho. We met at this small coffee shop just a few blocks from my apartment. He was younger than I thought he'd be, maybe in his mid-30s, but you could see the weight he carried. His eyes looked like they hadn't seen a good night's sleep in years. He smelled faintly of sandalwood and mint as he leaned across the table, that kind of soft scent that doesn't linger too long. We were tucked away in the corner, out of earshot from anyone else. He kept his voice low as he explained what they needed from me. The binder I found? Not enough. They needed something stronger. A confession, if possible. Or some kind of hard evidence that clearly tied my dad to the crimes. I asked him what that meant, what exactly they wanted me to do. That's when they laid it out for me. They wanted me to wear a wire. Get my dad to talk. To open up about what he and Uncle Alan had done. I almost laughed. I mean, seriously? My dad? Talk about that? The same man who shut me down when I was 8. The same man who refused to even acknowledge what I saw. He'll never say a word, I told them. He's been denying this my whole life. Detective Cho didn't back down. He leaned in a little closer. People like your dad and your uncle, they keep secrets for decades. But when the walls start to crack, some of them feel this need to explain. Especially to family. Sometimes they want to be understood. I wasn't convinced. But what choice did I have? They gave me a tiny recording device that looked just like a USB stick. Simple to use. Press the side button to start recording. That's it. My hands were already sweaty just holding the thing. The next day, I called my dad. Asked if we could get lunch. Just the two of us. Told him I wanted to talk about everything that was happening with Uncle Alan. He paused for a second. Then agreed. We picked a diner we used to go to when I was a kid. I used to beg for their chocolate milkshakes. Now, just the thought of sitting there across from him turned my stomach. I got there early. Chose a booth in the back where it was quiet. The vinyl seat gave that familiar squeak as I slid in. The place smelled exactly like I remembered, grease, coffee, and something sweet frying in the kitchen. I clicked on the recorder and tucked it into my jacket pocket. My dad showed up right on time. He looked older than I remembered. His hair had more gray, and there were deep lines around his eyes. No hug. No smile. Just sat down across from me like we were strangers. We ordered food we didn't touch. I poked at my fries, barely tasting anything, trying to find the right words. In the end, I just said it. I found the binder in your study, I told him, watching his face closely. He didn't flinch. No surprise. No denial. Just this heavy look of weariness. You shouldn't have been in my study, he said quietly. That was it. Not a single word to deny what I saw. Just mad that I saw it. So I pressed him harder. How long have you been involved with what Uncle Alan was doing? He stared down at his coffee. Stirred it slowly. The spoon tapped the ceramic mug like a ticking clock. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I had to lean in to hear. He said it started when they were kids. Alan was older, by 4 years. It began with what he called games. Stuff that no kid should ever experience. Alan had been his first abuser. But as they grew up, Alan shifted. Started targeting girls instead. And then, he taught my dad how to do it. How to hide in plain sight. How to watch without being seen. How to record without leaving a trace. My stomach turned listening to him talk. A part of me pitied the boy he used to be. The one his brother hurt. But the man sitting in front of me now? The man who carried that darkness forward and let it touch me. I was sickened. You knew what he was doing, I said, my voice starting to shake. Why didn't you protect me? He looked up at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like years. I thought I was protecting you, he said. By keeping you away from him. By making sure you never went back to that room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My voice cracked. But you let him take pictures of me. You let him into our house. He shook his head slowly. I didn't know about the book. Not until you told us that day. I swear. I confronted him after, but he threatened me. Said if I exposed him, he'd take me down too. I was trapped. I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. But then I asked, what about the girl in your binder? Did you protect her? He didn't answer. Just stared down at the table. That was all I needed to hear. I pushed my plate away and stood up. I couldn't sit there any longer. Couldn't breathe. I have to go, I said. He didn't stop me. I drove straight to Detective Cho's office and handed over the recorder. He and Monica sat there, listening to the whole thing while I just stared at the wall, numb. When the audio ended, Monica placed her hand gently on my shoulder. This is good, she said. It's not a full confession, but it's enough. We can get a search warrant. The next few days were a blur. They searched my parents' house while my mom was at work. Turns out, there was more. Hidden behind a false panel in my dad's study were more binders. More names. More evidence. More victims. My mom called me, screaming through the phone, demanding to know what I'd done. I hung up on her. 2 days later, they arrested my dad. I sat in my car across the street and watched the whole thing. He looked small. Almost fragile. My mom stood in the doorway, hand covering her mouth, crying. But I couldn't go to her. Not after everything. The hearing was set for the following week. Monica explained that, while the case against Uncle Alan was airtight, they didn't have quite as much physical evidence against my dad. But the recording and the binders? It was enough to hold him. Then she asked me the question I'd been dreading. Would I testify? I said yes. Even though just thinking about testifying made me want to throw up. My stomach twisted every time I imagined myself on that stand, telling strangers what I'd seen, what I'd lived. The night before the hearing, my dad asked to speak with me. Monica warned me against it. She said it could mess with my head. But I needed to hear what he had to say. They set it up in one of those cold, windowless interview rooms at the station. Just a metal table between us. Detective Cho stood silently in the corner, arms crossed. The buzzing overhead lights cast hard shadows across my dad's face. He looked awful. Gaunt. Pale. The orange jail uniform sagged on his body like he'd already given up. He hadn't even been in custody that long, but it was like the years finally caught up to him all at once. He didn't bother with small talk. I'm going to plead guilty, he said right away. And I'm going to tell them everything I know about Alan. I blinked. That wasn't what I was expecting. Why? He looked straight at me. Because I need to protect you, he said quietly. Something I should have done a long time ago. I didn't even know how to respond. A part of me wanted to scream that it was too late. That he'd had his chance. And instead of standing by me, he stood by his monster of a brother. But another part of me, some broken little corner of my heart, felt a flicker of something like relief. Gratitude, even. If he followed through, it meant I wouldn't have to testify. Wouldn't have to relive that room, or those pictures, in front of a courtroom full of people. Then he said something that chilled me. Alan, he's worse than they think. The stuff they found? It's just the surface. There's more. A lot more. I leaned forward. What do you mean? He lowered his voice, though we both knew Detective Cho could hear everything. The missing kids, the ones they haven't recovered yet? Alan kept records. Not all of them were at the house. My stomach dropped like a stone. Where? There's a cabin, he said. Up near Lake Milliton. Belonged to our grandfather. Alan took it over after he died. No one else goes there. That's when Detective Cho stepped forward. We need the exact address. My dad nodded. I'll give it all to you. Directions, map, everything. The keys hidden under a fake rock by the back door. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How long had he known about this place? How many kids had gone missing while he sat on that knowledge? Why now? I asked. Why are you suddenly ready to come clean? He looked at me, really looked at me, with tears welling up in his eyes. Because I saw your face, the day they arrested me. I saw what I'd done to you. What I'd let happen. And I can't live with it anymore. I didn't know if I believed him. Maybe part of him meant it. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was that he was finally talking. That maybe, just maybe, some of those families would get the truth they'd been waiting on for years. The next day, a team of officers and forensic specialists made their way to the cabin. I stayed behind in my apartment, flinching every time my phone buzzed. That evening, Monica called. Her voice was tight, like she was trying to stay calm but barely holding it together. We found them, she said. 6 bodies. All matching missing children cases from the last 15 years. I sat down hard on the couch, legs giving out. 6 kids. 6 families who had lived in limbo, praying, hoping, wondering if their child would ever come home. 6 lives my uncle took. And my dad, he'd known. Maybe not all the details, but enough. Enough to stop it. And he didn't. There's something else, Monica said. We found journals. Detailed accounts. Your uncle documented everything. My throat went dry. He wrote about your father. It wasn't just passive. Your dad helped. He participated. I dropped the phone and ran for the bathroom. I barely made it to the toilet before I threw up everything in my stomach. I stayed there for hours, curled up on the cold tile floor, my mind spinning, trying to process the unthinkable. He wasn't just someone who looked the other way. He was part of it. My own father was a predator. The next morning, I woke up in the same spot, stiff and sore. I grabbed my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages, some from Monica, some from Cho, a few from reporters who'd somehow gotten my number. And one from my mom. All it said was, "We need to talk." I didn't want to hear it. Didn't want to listen to more excuses or feel blamed for something they created. But part of me wondered. Did she know? Was she part of it too? I had to know. We agreed to meet at a park near my place. Public. Neutral. Somewhere safe. I got there early. Sat on a bench and watched people walk their dogs, kids on bikes, couples with coffee. Everyone looked so normal. I wondered if I'd ever feel that way again. My mom showed up looking wrecked. Her hair was greasy, clothes rumpled. She sat beside me on the bench without a word. For a long time, we just stared ahead. The laughter of kids playing on a nearby jungle gym felt surreal, like it belonged in someone else's world. Finally I asked, "Did you know? About Dad and Uncle Alan?" She didn't look at me. Just shook her head. Not everything. Not the deaths. But I knew something wasn't right between them. She took a shaky breath. The way Alan used to look at you. The way your dad would get so angry when you brought up that day. I knew something was off. And you did nothing. I said. My voice flat. She turned toward me, eyes rimmed red. I was scared. Scared of losing everything. Scared of what it would do to the family. Scared of what it would do to you if the truth ever came out. So instead, you let it keep happening. You let other kids suffer. That hit her like a slap. She flinched hard. I didn't know it went that far. She whispered. I didn't know about the other children. I swear. I didn't know if I believed her. I didn't know if it made any difference. The damage was done. Lives were shattered. Mine included. What happens now? She asked. Her voice was barely audible. Now? I said. Now they go to prison. For a long time. Maybe forever. She nodded slowly. And what about us? She said. What happens to us? I turned and looked at her, really looked. The woman who stood by and watched while I was hurt. The mother who chose silence over justice. Who protected her comfort instead of her child. I don't know, I said honestly. I said I didn't know what would happen to us. But deep down, I wasn't sure there even was an us left anymore. That's when my mom broke down. She started to cry, those quiet, shaking sobs that make your shoulders tremble. But I didn't move. I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I just sat there, numb, staring at nothing, feeling this hollow emptiness where my family used to live. The weeks that followed were a blur. Police interviews. Meetings with the prosecutor. Reporters stalking the sidewalk outside my apartment like vultures. I ended up taking a leave of absence from work. I couldn't focus, couldn't function. Sleep was out of the question. Food? Barely touched it. I lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. Uncle Alan's case was moving fast. The evidence against him was rock solid. But my dad's situation was messy. His confession helped, but his lawyer was pushing this angle that he was just another victim, groomed, manipulated by his older brother. That he deserved some kind of leniency. Meanwhile, Monica kept meeting with me regularly, walking me through the possibility of testifying after all. She was worried about how I was holding up, gently suggesting I speak to someone. She even handed me a list of therapists who specialized in trauma. I stuffed the list in a drawer and didn't touch it. Then, about a month after my dad's arrest, I got a phone call from the county jail. It was him. My thumb hovered over the decline button. But for some reason, I picked up. He didn't even say hello. Just launched right into it. I need to tell you something, he said. Something I haven't told the police yet. My heart started pounding. What is it? There's another place. Another cabin. It's close to the state line. Alan owns it, but under a different name. There's more evidence there. More records. I felt physically sick. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why not go straight to the detectives? He hesitated. Because I wanted you to know. I want you to see that I'm trying. I know it doesn't fix anything, what I did, what I allowed to happen to you. But I need you to know I'm trying to make things right. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I told him I'd passed the info to Detective Cho and hung up. Then I sat there in the dark for a long time, turning it over in my head. I hated him. For his weakness. For what he did. For what he didn't do. But still, some part of me, a sliver I didn't want to admit existed, was thankful he was talking. Even if it was too late. I called Cho the next morning and gave him everything my dad had told me. 2 days later, Monica called. Her voice was tight and controlled. They found it, she said. The second cabin. And more evidence. More victims. Uncle Alan's crimes kept growing, sprawling outward like a monster with no end. It was getting harder to even comprehend the full weight of it. My dad's preliminary hearing was set for the following week. His lawyer was still pushing hard for a plea deal, but with the new evidence, the prosecution wasn't budging. And me? I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. A part of me wanted him to rot in prison. Another part just wanted it all to be over so I could breathe again. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment for hours, checking the locks over and over. Around 3 a.m., I finally opened that drawer, the one with the therapist list Monica gave me. I stared at the names. Then picked up my phone and sent an email to the first one. Just a short message, asking for an appointment. It wasn't much. But it felt like something. A step. An acknowledgement that I couldn't keep doing this alone. That I needed help. The next morning, I dressed carefully. I wanted to look calm. Strong. Like someone who hadn't been shattered on the inside. I drove to the courthouse with the windows down, letting the cold morning air sting my face and clear my head. Monica was waiting for me out front. She looked serious. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure anyone could ever really be ready for something like this. We walked in together, past a wall of reporters and flashing cameras. I kept my eyes low, ignoring the questions they shouted at me. Inside, I took a seat near the back of the courtroom, far enough that I wouldn't have to look my dad in the eye. The room filled up fast. Reporters, court staff, a few curious people who just wanted to watch it all unfold. My mom showed up. She sat on the opposite side. We didn't acknowledge each other. And then they brought my dad in. He looked small. That's the only word I can use. His jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. His shoulders slumped forward. He didn't lift his eyes. Didn't scan the room. Didn't try to find me. He just sat down beside his lawyer and stared at the table. The hearing moved quickly. The charges were read. The summary of evidence was presented. My dad's attorney gave a short speech about his cooperation, about how he was helping the case against Alan. The prosecutor followed up with a sharp rebuttal, laying out the severity of the crimes, the long list of victims, the years of silence. Then something unexpected happened. My dad asked to speak. The judge seemed surprised, but allowed it. My dad stood slowly. His hands shook a little. He didn't have any notes. He just started talking. "I know there's nothing I can say that will make this right," he began. His voice was soft, but steady. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Or mercy. But I want the court to know, I'm pleading guilty not for a lighter sentence. Not because of any deal. But because it's the right thing to do." He paused for a moment. "Those families deserve the truth. My daughter deserves the truth." Then he looked up. Our eyes met. Just for a second. And then I looked away. "I failed," he continued. "I failed as a brother when I didn't stop Alan. I failed as a father when I didn't protect my child. And I failed as a human being when I took part in things that no one should ever take part in. I accept whatever punishment the court decides is fair," my dad said. "All I ask is that my cooperation be considered, not for my sake, but to make sure Alan never gets the chance to hurt another child." When he finished, the whole courtroom was dead silent. I sat there, tears rolling down my face, not even sure what I was feeling. Relief? Rage? Some warped version of closure? Probably all of it at once. The judge nodded and thanked my dad for speaking. Then he announced that formal sentencing would come later, after a pre-sentencing investigation. My dad was taken away in handcuffs, back to whatever cold, gray cell he now called home. I watched him go. This man who had once been my father. This man who betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. Who was now, finally, trying to set things right, but way too late. Outside the courtroom, I was sitting on a bench, staring at nothing, when Monica found me. She sat next to me quietly, not saying a word at first. Just being there. Eventually, she told me something that stuck with me. "Because of your father's cooperation, we might be able to close dozens of cold cases. Families that have been waiting for years, they might finally get answers." It wasn't justice. Not really. But it was something. A small scrap of good pulled from a mountain of evil. I just nodded. I couldn't speak. I felt like I'd been wrung out and left hollow. But under all that exhaustion, there was something else. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was the start of healing. The truth was finally out. The secrets were in the light. This wasn't the end, I knew that, but maybe it was the beginning of something different. Something honest. When I stepped out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, I took a long breath. A real one. The kind that fills your chest all the way up. And for the first time in what felt like years, my lungs didn't feel like they were collapsing under a weight I couldn't name. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if I'd ever speak to my mom again. Didn't know how I'd rebuild my life. Or if the nightmares would ever leave me. But I did know one thing. I had survived. I had spoken the truth. I had broken the silence that nearly broke me. And for that moment, for that single, quiet moment, it was enough. I didn't sleep that night. My mind wouldn't stop replaying everything my dad said about protecting me. It was total bullshit. If he had wanted to protect me, he would have done it when I was 8. When I came to him shaking, terrified, telling him what I saw. But instead of standing up for me, he protected a monster. He became one himself. The next morning, Detective Cho called. They'd uncovered more evidence at that second cabin my dad had told them about. More photos. More video. More journals, everything labeled, time-stamped, organized like it was some kind of twisted library. Some of the materials dated back 30 years. 3 whole decades of horror. 30 goddamn years of abuse that nobody stopped. Your dad's cooperation is making a huge difference in building our case, Cho said. The DA thinks we can get life without parole for your uncle. I should have felt relieved. But I didn't. I just felt empty. What about my dad? I asked. That's more complicated, he said. His lawyer is pushing hard on the idea that he was a victim too. With everything he's provided, he could be looking at a reduced sentence. That hit me like a punch to the gut. A reduced sentence? After everything? He made his choices. Choices that hurt kids. That hurt me. I need to see him again, I said. The words came out before I'd even thought them through. Cho paused. Are you sure that's a good idea? I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But I knew one thing, I needed answers. And only my dad could give them. I'm sure. 2 days later, I was back in that same interview room. Cold. Metal table. That familiar hum of fluorescent lights. He looked even worse than the last time, sunken eyes, pale skin, like he'd dropped another 20 pounds. When I walked in, he looked up. A flicker of something like hope crossed his face. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice hoarse. I sat down across from him and kept my hands in my lap so he wouldn't see them shaking. I'm not here for you, I said. I'm here for me. I need answers. He nodded. Anything. Ask me anything. I tried to ask the question that had haunted me since the moment I found that binder. Did you ever? I couldn't finish it. But he knew what I meant. No. Never. Not you, he said immediately. I swear to God. I wanted to believe him. I needed to. But trust? That was something he'd already taken from me. But you let him take those pictures of me, I said. You let him into our house, knowing what he was. His eyes welled up. Alan had something on me, he admitted. Proof of what I'd done. With other children. He threatened to expose me if I didn't let him in. I thought I could protect you by keeping him from being alone with you. By watching him. He swallowed hard. I was wrong. I was a coward. His words hit me like a slap. I'd suspected it. But hearing him say it made it real. How many? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. How many kids did you hurt? He looked down at his hands. 3, he said. That I was directly involved with. More that I helped Alan target. Watched. Took photos of. I felt like I was going to throw up. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. And the girl in the binder? I asked. What happened to her? She's alive, he said quickly. I swear. I never. I just watched. Took pictures. As if that made it better. As if being a passive witness to a child's trauma was somehow less evil. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you, I said, the words scraping my throat like broken glass. I don't expect you to, he replied. I don't deserve it. But I will make sure Alan never gets out. Even if it means I spend the rest of my life behind bars. I searched his face for signs of manipulation. Lies. But all I saw was exhaustion. Regret. Maybe even remorse. But I'd believed him before. I believed him for years. Why should I trust anything now? You shouldn't, he said like he'd read my thoughts. I've given you no reason to. All I can do is show you who I am now. Not with words, but with what I do next. I stood up. I'd heard enough. At the door, I turned back. One last thing, I said. Does Mom know? About what you did? About the other kids? He shook his head slowly, firmly. No, he said. She doesn't know. She knew something was off between Alan and me. My dad said. She suspected he might have had inappropriate interests. But she never knew what I'd done. I kept that from her. I nodded. Not sure I believed him, but wanting to. Because the idea that my mom might have known, might have allowed all of this to happen, that was almost more than I could handle. As I stepped into a hallway, Detective Cho caught up to me. "Your dad just gave us more names," he said. 3 more victims we didn't know about. And directions to 2 other places where Alan might have hidden evidence. I leaned against the wall, suddenly so tired I could barely hold myself upright. "Is it ever going to end?" I asked. "How many kids did they hurt?" Cho looked grim. "We don't know yet. But we're going to find out. Thanks to your dad's cooperation." I let out a bitter laugh. "Don't make him sound like a hero. He's not doing this out of guilt. He's doing it to save his own ass." "Maybe," Cho said. "But that doesn't make the information useless. It's helping us build a stronger case." I left the station feeling hollow. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left nothing but skin and bone. The sun was shining, warm and bright, but it felt wrong. Like the world was trying to pretend it wasn't rotting from the inside. I drove around for hours, aimless. Eventually, I ended up at this old park I used to go to as a kid. I sat on a bench and watched the children play, laughing, chasing each other while their parents stood nearby, alert and protective. The way parents are supposed to be. My phone buzzed. It was Monica. "We've got a situation," she said, skipping right past hello. "Your uncle's offering a deal. Says he has information. About others." My stomach dropped. "What kind of information?" "He claims there's a network," she said. "Other perpetrators. People like him. In exchange for the names, he wants a reduced sentence." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "You can't be serious," I said. "You're not actually considering this?" "We have to consider everything," Monica replied. "If he's telling the truth, there could be more victims. Kids who are still being abused." I closed my eyes, fighting the rising nausea. "What about my dad? What does he say?" "He says he doesn't know anything about it," she said. "Claims Alan kept him isolated. That it was just the 2 of them." "And you believe him?" Monica paused. "I don't know. This case keeps twisting in directions I never imagined. We have to follow every lead, no matter how ugly." After we hung up, I sat there as the sun dipped behind the trees. The thought of my uncle, that man, getting a deal of any kind made me want to scream. But if there were more children out there, how could I say no? The next day, a call came through from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jake. My cousin. The same cousin I'd been playing hide-and-seek with all those years ago. We hadn't spoken since before the arrests. "I need to talk to you," he said. His voice was raw, like he'd been holding something in for a long time. "There's something you need to know." We met at a coffee shop downtown. Jake looked terrible. Pale. Exhausted. His hands trembled as he lifted his coffee to his lips. "I knew," he said, no hesitation. "I knew about the room. I knew what my dad was doing." I stared at him, stunned. Jake was 3 years older than me. Which meant, "You found it before I did," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah. A year earlier. Also during hide-and-seek. I went into that closet, just like you did. Found the door. Found the room." His voice cracked. "My dad caught me in there. And then he made sure I never said a word." It hit me all at once. Jake had been a victim too. My heart cracked open. "Why now?" I asked gently. "Why are you telling me this today?" "Because I heard about Alan's deal," Jake said, his jaw clenched. "He's trying to claim there's some massive ring. Like he's got secrets to trade." Jake's eyes locked on mine. "It's bullshit. There's no network. It was just him. And your dad. He's lying to save himself." I believed him. There was something in his eyes, a haunted, unshakable truth. "Will you tell the police?" I asked. "The prosecutor?" He nodded. "That's why I reached out. I needed you to hear it first. And I needed to say I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For not protecting you. For not saying something sooner. For staying silent." I reached across the table and took his hand. "You were a kid, Jake," I said softly. "You were scared. Just like I was. It wasn't your job to protect me," I told Jake softly. "That was the adult's responsibility. They're the ones who failed us. 2 days later, Jake gave his statement to Detective Cho and Monica Reyes. His testimony, paired with my dad's ongoing cooperation, tipped the scales. The DA made their decision: no deals. Not for Alan. Not for my dad. They were going for the maximum sentence for both men. Preliminary hearings were scheduled for the following month. I wasn't sure I could stomach being in the same room as my father and my uncle, hearing every vile detail laid bare in court. But I knew I had to be there. Not just for myself, but for the kids who never got to speak. For the ones who didn't survive. The night before the hearings, my mom showed up at my apartment. No warning. Just knocked on the door like nothing had happened. I almost didn't answer. But then I peeked through the peephole. She looked broken. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, dark circles carved under them like bruises. I opened the door, but I didn't invite her in. She stepped in anyway and perched on the edge of my couch, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to stay. "I left your father," she said after a long, heavy silence. "I filed for divorce." I didn't say anything. What could I say? It was the bare minimum. "I want you to know," she continued, her voice cracking. "I never knew. Not about the other children. Not about what he and Alan were doing. I swear to you. But you knew something," I said, sharper than I meant to be. "You knew I wasn't lying. You knew something wasn't right, and you still said nothing." She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I was scared. Scared of what it would do to our family. Of losing everything. I told myself maybe you misunderstood, that it couldn't be as bad as it seemed. Kids died, Mom," I said, my voice like ice. "Kids were abused and murdered while you worried about appearances." She flinched. Hard. "I know," she whispered. "I'll never forgive myself. Not ever." I didn't reach out to her. I didn't say it was okay. Because it wasn't. Her guilt was hers to carry. Just like my trauma was mine. "I don't know if we can fix this," I said honestly. "I don't even know if I want to." She nodded, dabbing at her tears with a tissue. "I understand. But I want you to know I'm here. If you ever need me. If you ever want to talk." After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing in on me. All I could think about was the hearings, the press, the trial that would follow. It would be a battle, but I'd already survived the worst. I could survive this too. The morning of the hearings was clear and bright. I got dressed slowly, choosing clothes that made me feel grounded. Dark jeans, a crisp button-down, and my favorite boots, the ones that made a sharp, solid sound when I walked. My armor. Monica was waiting for me outside the courthouse. "You ready for this?" she asked. I took a breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches. Legal teams murmured to each other. Victims' families lined the rows. I spotted Jake near the front, sitting next to his mom, my aunt. She looked like the years had caught up to her all at once. He gave me a small nod, and I nodded back. Then they brought Alan in. I looked at him. Forced myself to. And he looked small. Weaker. Not the monster I'd pictured in my head all these years. His eyes scanned the room quickly, still calculating, still hunting for an angle. Then they brought in my dad. He kept his head down, didn't even try to look for me. He just shuffled to his seat, slumped next to his attorney. The hearings went by like clockwork. Charges read. Evidence presented. Witnesses called. I listened as Detective Cho described what they found, the binders, the footage, the rooms. I listened as the coroner recounted how the victims died. I listened as Jake took the stand, his voice strong, even while speaking about things no child should ever have lived through. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the stand. Took the oath. Sat down. And I told my story. About the game of hide-and-seek. About the closet. The black book with my name on it. The photos. The silence that followed. About finding that same pattern again, years later, in my father's study. I told it all. Calm. Clear. Honest. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I just told the truth, finally, after a lifetime of being told to stay quiet. When I finished, the judge ruled that there was more than enough evidence to move forward with a full trial. No bail. As the guards led my dad and uncle out, my dad turned. Looked at me. I met his eyes. Didn't look away. Not this time. Outside, the reporters swarmed, shouting questions I had no intention of answering. Monica walked me to my car. "I'll keep you updated," she said. Jake caught up with us in the parking lot. "You did good in there," he said. "So did you," I told him. We stood there, awkward for a second. Survivors, bonded by blood and betrayal. "Maybe we could grab coffee sometime," Jake said. "Talk about normal stuff. I don't know anything but this." I nodded. "I'd like that." On the drive home, I thought about everything that still lay ahead. The trial. The sentencing. The years of healing I still had to do. It wouldn't be easy. There'd be rough days. Flashbacks. Nights I wouldn't sleep. Days where the weight of it all might try to crush me again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to hope. The truth was out. The silence had been broken. Alan and my dad were finally going to face justice. This wasn't the end. But it was the beginning of something new. I wasn't okay. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. But I would be. Someday. And until that day came, I'd keep moving forward. Keep speaking the truth. Keep surviving. And for now, that was enough.